I learned about betrayal the day Margaret Sanderson stood on my driveway demanding I hand over the keys to my brand new enclosed trailer, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward my property like she owned the place. The hot August sun beat down on our quiet Denver suburb, and sweat was already beading on her forehead, but that did not stop her from raising her voice loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. That trailer is in violation of Pine Ridge Estates HOA regulations, Section 12, subsection B, she announced, clutching her leather-bound HOA manual like it was the Constitution itself. You have exactly 24 hours to remove it from the premises, or I will be forced to implement daily fines starting at $200. I had just gotten home from a 72-hour shift. My muscles ached, and the last thing I needed was Margaret Sanderson, HOA President and self-appointed neighborhood tyrant, standing in my driveway making demands. I set down the duffel bag I was carrying and took a slow breath, reminding myself that losing my temper would only make things worse. "Margaret, the trailer is parked in my garage," I said, keeping my voice level. "It is not visible from the street." The HOA regulations state that recreational vehicles and trailers must not be visible from public roads. I checked before I bought it. Her face flushed an impressive shade of crimson. "The regulations have been updated, Owen. Perhaps if you attended HOA meetings instead of gallivanting around doing whatever it is you do, you would be aware of the new rules." "What new rules?" I asked, genuinely confused. She flipped through her manual with practiced efficiency, stopping at a page marked with a pink sticky note. "As of last month, no homeowner may store recreational vehicles, trailers, boats, or similar equipment on their property, regardless of visibility. The only exception is if said items are stored in an approved storage facility at least 5 miles from the neighborhood." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You are telling me I cannot keep my own trailer in my own garage on my own property?" "That is precisely what I am telling you," she said, snapping the manual shut. "The board voted unanimously. Well, almost unanimously. Deborah Thompson abstained, but we all know she abstains from everything." "I did not receive any notice about this vote or this rule change," I said. Margaret waved her hand dismissively. "The notice was posted on the community bulletin board at the clubhouse and included in last month's newsletter." "I did not get a newsletter." "That is not my problem, Owen. Perhaps you should check your mailbox more regularly." She pulled out her phone and started tapping on the screen. "Now, I will need you to sign this acknowledgement of violation form. If you surrender the trailer to the HOA within 48 hours, we can waive the initial fine." Something in her tone made my blood run cold. "Surrender the trailer to the HOA? What are you talking about?" "The board has decided that confiscated items in violation of HOA regulations become property of the association, to be sold at auction with proceeds going toward neighborhood improvements." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made you want to check if your wallet was still in your pocket. "It is all very standard. Standard. Margaret, that trailer cost me $8,000. I bought it 2 weeks ago." "Then you should have read the updated regulations," she said, her tone suggesting this was all somehow my fault. "Now, if you will just sign here." "I am not signing anything," I said firmly. "And I am definitely not surrendering an $8,000 trailer because of some rule that was passed without proper notification to homeowners." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you refusing to comply with HOA regulations?" "I am saying I need to see documentation of this rule change, proof that homeowners were properly notified according to the HOA bylaws, and I need to review the legality of the HOA confiscating private property worth thousands of dollars." Margaret's face went from red to purple. I am the HOA President, Owen Kirkland. When I tell you something is in the regulations, you can trust that it is accurate. I have been running this neighborhood for 8 years, and I have never had someone question my authority so blatantly. There is a first time for everything, I said. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You are making a very big mistake. I have ways of making life extremely difficult for non-compliant homeowners. Little violations add up quickly. That crack in your sidewalk, $50 fine. The lawn that is 1/4 inch too long, another 50. The wrong shade of white on your mailbox post, $75. By the time I am done, you will wish you had just handed over the trailer. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. Are you threatening me? I am informing you of the consequences of non-compliance, she said, her smile returning. But honestly, Owen, why are you being so difficult? That is a very nice trailer. Barely used, excellent condition. It would fetch a good price at auction. Think of it as a donation to the community. And there it was. The real reason behind this sudden rule change and her insistence on confiscating my trailer. Margaret wanted it for herself or someone she knew, and she was using her position as HOA President to steal it legally. I am not giving you my trailer, Margaret, I said quietly. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. If you want to find me, send the documentation through proper channels and I will see you in court. Her nostrils flared. You are going to regret this. I will take my chances. She spun on her heel and marched back across the street to her house, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. I watched her go, then grabbed my duffel bag and headed inside, my brief moment of peace after a long shift completely shattered. My house was quiet and cool, exactly how I had left it 3 days ago. I dropped the duffel in the laundry room and headed straight for the kitchen, pulling out my laptop and the folder of paperwork I had received when I bought the house 2 years ago. The HOA bylaws were in there somewhere, and I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. 2 hours later, I had my answer, and it was not good news for Margaret. According to the bylaws, any changes to HOA regulations required written notice to all homeowners at least 30 days before the vote, followed by another written notice within 7 days of the vote passing. The notices had to be sent via certified mail or hand, delivered with signature confirmation. A posting on a bulletin board and an optional newsletter did not meet the legal requirements. Furthermore, the bylaws made no mention of the HOA having the authority to confiscate private property. Fines were authorized, but confiscation was nowhere in the documentation. I took screenshots of the relevant sections and sent them to my phone, then started digging deeper into Margaret's tenure as HOA President. What I found was disturbing. Over the past 8 years, there had been 17 different special assessments for neighborhood improvements, totaling over $200,000. But when I looked at what had actually been improved, the numbers did not add up. New entrance signs, fresh paint on the clubhouse, some landscaping at the front of the neighborhood. Maybe $60,000 worth of work, being generous. Where had the other $140,000 gone? I was still researching when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Nathan Robinson, my next-door neighbor and one of the few people in Pine Ridge Estates who did not worship at the altar of Margaret Sanderson. "Owen, man, I just saw Margaret storming away from your place," Nathan said when I answered. "What did you do to make the Queen be so angry?" I explained the trailer situation, and Nathan let out a low whistle. "I knew something was fishy about that vote," he said. "My wife Natalie and I never got a notice about it. We only found out because Janet Chen mentioned it at the pool last week." Said Margaret pushed it through at an emergency board meeting. Emergency meeting for what? That is the thing. There was no emergency. Margaret just called it an emergency so she could vote without the usual notification requirements. Nathan paused. Owen, you need to be careful. Margaret has a reputation for going after people who cross her. Remember the Johnsons? I did remember. The Johnsons had lived 3 houses down from me, a nice retired couple who kept to themselves. They had gotten into a dispute with Margaret over a tree that was supposedly blocking someone's view of the mountains. Margaret had fined them repeatedly, then placed a lien on their house when they refused to pay. They ended up selling and moving out of state just to escape the harassment. I am not the Johnsons, I said. No, you are definitely not, Nathan agreed. But Margaret does not know that yet. Just watch your back, okay? And if you need a witness or anything for court, Natalie and I will back you up. Thanks, Nathan, I appreciate it. After we hung up, I spent another hour documenting everything I could find about Margaret's questionable financial management and the irregular rule changes. Then, I finally allowed myself to collapse on the couch and close my eyes. I had been asleep for maybe 20 minutes when someone started pounding on my front door. I dragged myself up and looked through the peephole to find Margaret standing on my porch again, this time accompanied by 2 men I recognized as board members. Brian Patterson and Scott Miller, both of whom seemed to exist solely to agree with whatever Margaret said. I opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. What do you want, Margaret? I am here to conduct an official property inspection, she announced. As HOA President, I have the right to inspect any property in the neighborhood to ensure compliance with regulations. You have a warrant? I asked. She looked taken aback. A warrant? This is not a police matter, Owen. This is HOA business. Then no, you cannot come in. The bylaws state that property inspections require 48 hours written notice and must be scheduled at a time convenient for the homeowner. Brian stepped forward. He was a large man who probably thought his size was intimidating. Look, buddy, we are just trying to do our jobs here. Margaret said you have a trailer that is in violation. We need to verify the situation. The trailer is in my garage, which is my private property. You are not coming in without a warrant or my permission, and you do not have my permission. Margaret's jaw clenched. Owen, I am trying to handle this reasonably. If you force me to escalate, I will. I can make 1 phone call and have the county code enforcement here within the hour. Then make your call, I said, but you are not coming into my house. For a moment, I thought she might actually try to push past me. Scott Miller put a hand on her arm. Margaret, maybe we should come back tomorrow with proper notice. She shook him off. I do not take orders from homeowners who think the rules do not apply to them. She pulled out her phone. Fine. Owen, you are hereby fined $500 for obstruction of an HOA inspection. You will receive formal documentation within 24 hours. Looking forward to it, I said, and closed the door. Through the window, I watched them retreat to Margaret's house, where they stood in a tight circle on her front lawn, clearly strategizing their next move. I felt exhaustion pulling at me again, but I knew I needed to act fast. Margaret was escalating quickly, which meant I needed protection. I picked up my phone and called my supervisor, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice crisp and professional as always. Owen, you are supposed to be sleeping. What is wrong? Sorry to bother you, Lieutenant, but I have a situation. I explained everything that had happened with Margaret and the trailer, including her threats and the questionable finances. Sarah was quiet for a moment. This HOA President, she does not know what you do for a living. No, madam. I keep my work life and personal life separate. Most of my neighbors think I am some kind of traveling salesman. and she is threatening to confiscate an $8,000 trailer based on rules that were not properly enacted and making up fines to harass you. Yes, madam. Owen, you know I cannot officially intervene in a civil dispute. I know. I am not asking you to. I just wanted to give you a heads up in case this situation gets worse. And I wanted to ask if you know any good lawyers who handle HOA disputes. Sarah gave me the name of an attorney her sister had used in a property dispute, and we talked for a few more minutes before she had to go. After we hung up, I immediately called the attorney, a woman named Patricia Moore. Her receptionist said she was in court, but would return my call before end of business. I finally managed to get a few hours of sleep, though my dreams were filled with Margaret's angry face and stacks of fine notices. When I woke up, it was early evening, and my phone showed 3 missed calls from a number I did not recognize, and one from Patricia Moore. I called Patricia back first. She listened to my story without interrupting, then asked a few pointed questions about the HOA bylaws and Margaret's behavior. "Mr. Kirkland, you have a very strong case," she said when I finished. "The HOA clearly violated its own bylaws regarding rule changes, and this confiscation clause is legally dubious at best. At worst, it is theft. I would be happy to represent you, but I need to be honest with you. These cases can take months and cost thousands in legal fees. What if there is also embezzlement involved?" I asked. "I found evidence that Margaret may have misappropriated over $100,000 in HOA funds." The line went silent. "That is a criminal matter. If you have proof, you need to report it to the police." "I have strong evidence, but I need someone to follow the money trail properly. Can you do that?" "I can, but again, it will cost you. My retainer is $3,000. "That is fine. When can we meet?" We scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon, and I spent the rest of the evening organizing all my documentation. I also called Nathan and asked him to spread the word to other neighbors that there might be financial irregularities with the HOA. If Margaret was going to war with me, I was going to make sure everyone knew what she was really doing. The next morning, I woke up to find a formal notice stuck to my front door. It was printed on official HOA letterhead and listed 5 separate violations: the trailer, obstruction of inspection, lawn height, mailbox paint, and something about my house numbers not being the correct size. The total fines came to $1,200, due within 10 days. I took pictures of everything and added it to my evidence folder. Then I went outside to check the so-called violations. My lawn was perfectly trimmed. I had mowed it myself 4 days ago, and it was well within the HOA height requirements. The mailbox paint was the exact shade of white specified in the regulations. I had repainted it just 3 months ago using the approved color code. And my house numbers were the same ones that had been there when I bought the place, which meant they had been approved by the HOA during the sale inspection. Margaret was making things up, just like she had threatened to do. I was photographing the mailbox when Janet Chen walked over from across the street. She was a small woman in her 60s who had lived in Pine Ridge Estates since it was first built. "Owen, I heard what Margaret is doing to you," she said quietly, glancing around like she was worried about being overheard. "I want you to know that not everyone agrees with her." "Thanks, Janet. I appreciate that. She did the same thing to my nephew when he lived here. Made-up violations harassed him constantly. He finally just paid her off to make it stop." Janet's face hardened. "I should have said something then. I am sorry. It is not your fault. But Janet, do you know anything about the HOA finances, where the money from special assessments actually goes?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Margaret's husband Gerald owns a landscaping company. Most of the HOA maintenance contracts go to him, even though his prices are higher than competitors. And her daughter Susan runs a property management company that the HOA pays for administrative services, even though Margaret does all the actual work herself. That is a conflict of interest, I said. It is more than that. It is fraud. Janet looked around again. I have been keeping my own records for years. Copies of invoices, contracts, everything. I always thought someone should investigate, but I did not know who to tell. Margaret has friends at the county office. Would you be willing to share those records with my attorney? Absolutely. It is time someone stood up to her. We exchanged phone numbers, and Janet promised to compile everything she had. I was starting to feel like I might actually have a chance at winning this fight when a county code enforcement truck pulled up in front of my house. A tired-looking man in his 50s climbed out, carrying a clipboard. Owen Kirkland. That is me. I am Dale Mitchell, County Code Enforcement. I received a complaint about zoning violations at this address. He did not sound happy about being there. Let me guess, Margaret Sanderson called you. He gave me a weary smile. Mrs. Sanderson calls us at least twice a week about something. Usually it is nothing, but I still have to follow up. May I take a look at this trailer she is complaining about? Sure. It is in the garage. I led him through the house to the garage. The trailer was sitting exactly where I had parked it. A pristine 16-foot enclosed cargo trailer with my state's license plates properly displayed. Dale walked around it, took some measurements, checked the registration and vehicle identification number. This is registered and insured. Yes, sir. All the paperwork is current. And you are not running a business out of it or using it for commercial purposes. No, sir. Personal use only. Camping, moving furniture, helping friends move, that sort of thing. He made some notes on his clipboard. Mr. Kirkland, this trailer does not violate any county zoning regulations. It is properly registered. It is stored on your private property in an enclosed garage, and it is not being used for commercial purposes. Mrs. Sanderson may have an issue with it under HOA rules, but that is a civil matter between you and the HOA. The county has no grounds to take action. Relief flooded through me. Can you put that in writing? I will file my report today. You should receive a copy within 48 hours. He handed me his card. If Mrs. Sanderson continues to claim that code enforcement is going to take action, you can show her my report and have her call me directly. Though I should warn you, in my experience, HOA disputes like this tend to get worse before they get better. I am starting to realize that. After Dale left, I headed to my meeting with Patricia Moore. Her office was in a modern building in downtown Denver, with a view of the mountains that probably cost extra in rent. Patricia herself was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who radiated competence. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The HOA bylaws, the suspicious finances, Margaret's harassment, the fake violations. Patricia took notes, asked questions, and occasionally shook her head in disbelief. Mr. Kirkland, this is one of the more egregious cases I have seen, she said finally. And I have seen a lot of bad HOA behavior. The good news is you have an excellent case. The bad news is Margaret Sanderson has likely committed multiple crimes, which means this could get complicated. What kind of crimes? Embezzlement, fraud, theft by deception, possibly extortion depending on how we frame her threats to you. If even half of what you have documented is accurate, she could face serious criminal charges. Patricia leaned back in her chair. The question is how you want to proceed. We can file a civil lawsuit to block the fines and force the HOA to follow its own bylaws. That is the safe, simple option. Or we can go to the police with evidence of criminal activity, which will likely result in a full investigation and possible prosecution. That option is riskier but has the potential to remove Margaret from power permanently. What do you recommend? Honestly, both. File the civil suit to protect yourself immediately, then report the criminal activity to trigger an investigation. But you need to be prepared for Margaret to retaliate. People like her do not go down quietly. I thought about the Johnsons, forced to sell their home and move away. I thought about Janet's nephew paying Margaret off just to be left alone. I thought about how many other people Margaret had probably bullied and stolen from over the years. Let's do both, I said. File the lawsuit and report the crimes. I am not backing down. Patricia smiled. Good. I will have the lawsuit drafted by tomorrow. In the meantime, document everything Margaret does. Every interaction, every violation notice, every threat. If she escalates, we want a record. I left her office feeling like I finally had a plan. The feeling lasted about 3 hours, which was how long it took for Margaret to make her next move. I was grilling dinner in my backyard when I heard shouting from the front of the house. I turned off the grill and walked around to find Margaret standing in my driveway with her phone held up, recording video. This is Margaret Sanderson, President of Pine Ridge Estates HOA, she announced loudly, clearly performing for the camera. I am here to document the ongoing violations by resident Owen Kirkland, who has refused to comply with HOA regulations and has made threats against board members. I have not made any threats, I said calmly. You threatened to see us in court, she shot back. That is a threat of legal action, which constitutes harassment of HOA officials. Margaret, legal action is not harassment. It is a constitutional right. You are also in violation of the noise ordinance, she continued, ignoring me. Your grill is producing excessive smoke that is disturbing neighbors. I looked at my small propane grill, which was producing virtually no smoke at all. You cannot be serious. I am very serious, Owen. That is another $200 fine. She finally lowered her phone. You know, this could all go away if you would just be reasonable. Surrender the trailer, pay the existing fines, and we can forget this whole unpleasant situation. Or, I said, you could follow the law and your own bylaws instead of trying to steal my property. Her expression turned ugly. You think you are so smart, do not you? You think you can waltz into this neighborhood and ignore the rules that the rest of us follow. I have news for you, Owen. I have destroyed better people than you. By the time I am done, you will be begging me to take that trailer off your hands. Is that a threat, Margaret? Because I am recording this conversation. I held up my own phone, which had been recording video since I walked around the house. She went pale, then red, then pale again. You cannot record me without my consent. Colorado is a one-party consent state. I only need my own consent to record conversations I am part of. You, on the other hand, just admitted on camera that you plan to destroy me unless I surrender my property. That is textbook extortion. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she spun around and marched back to her house without another word. I saved the video and immediately sent it to Patricia Moore with a brief explanation. She called me back within 5 minutes. Owen, this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of evidence we need. I am filing the lawsuit first thing tomorrow morning, and I am including this video. We are also going to file for an emergency restraining order to prevent her from coming onto your property or contacting you except through official HOA channels. You think we will get it after this video? Absolutely. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal activity. Patricia filed the lawsuit and the restraining order request. I gave a formal statement to the Denver Police Department about the suspected embezzlement, and they opened an investigation. Janet Chen provided her records to both Patricia and the police, and 2 other neighbors came forward with their own stories of harassment and suspicious financial dealings. Margaret responded by ramping up her campaign against me. More violation notices appeared on my door, each one more ridiculous than the last. She claimed my garbage cans were visible from the street 15 minutes before pickup time. She said my doormat was the wrong color. She fined me for having a package sit on my porch for 4 hours before I got home to retrieve it. But she stayed off my property, which meant the restraining order was at least partially working. The hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for a Monday morning. I took the day off work, put on my best suit, and met Patricia at the courthouse. Margaret was already there with her own attorney, a nervous-looking young man who kept shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Karen Winters. She reviewed the filings, watched the video of Margaret's threat, and listened to both attorneys present their cases. Margaret's attorney argued that there was no threat, just a heated conversation between neighbors, and that Margaret had every right to enforce HOA regulations. Patricia countered with the video evidence, the documentation of made-up violations, and testimony from Nathan and Janet about Margaret's pattern of harassment. Judge Winters was not impressed with Margaret's attorney. "Counselor, your client is on video saying she will destroy Mr. Kirkland unless he surrenders his property. How exactly is that not a threat, Your Honor?" Mrs. Sanderson was speaking metaphorically. Metaphorically. Judge Winters looked at Margaret over her glasses. "Mrs. Sanderson, did you metaphorically fine Mr. Kirkland over $5,000 in 3 days for violations including a doormat and a package on his porch?" Margaret lifted her chin. "Those were legitimate violations of HOA regulations. Were they?" "Because Mr. Kirkland's attorney has provided copies of those regulations, and I see nothing about doormats or package delivery timeframes." "Those fall under general aesthetic standards," Margaret insisted. "General aesthetic standards that you interpret however you want, whenever you want, to target people who disagree with you." Judge Winters shook her head. "I am granting the restraining order. Mrs. Sanderson, you are prohibited from going onto Mr. Kirkland's property, from contacting him directly except through official written HOA communications sent via certified mail, and from levying any fines against him unless you can demonstrate clear, documented violations of properly enacted HOA regulations. Do you understand?" Margaret's face had gone deep red. "Your Honor, I am the HOA President. I have a responsibility to enforce our community standards." "Then enforce them according to the law and your own bylaws," Judge Winters said sharply. "If I hear that you have violated this order, there will be consequences. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Margaret said through clenched teeth. We left the courthouse, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in days. Patricia was pleased with how the hearing had gone, but she warned me that it was just the first step. The restraining order protects you personally, but the larger lawsuit about the HOA violations and the criminal investigation are still ongoing, she said. Margaret is going to be angry, and angry people make mistakes. Stay alert. She was right. 2 days after the restraining order was issued, I came home from a shift to find that someone had slashed all 4 tires on my truck. There were no security cameras on my house, but Nathan had a doorbell camera that covered part of my driveway. The footage showed a figure in dark clothing and a ski mask approaching my truck around 2 in the morning and using a knife on the tires before disappearing into the darkness. I filed a police report, and the responding officer took the footage as evidence. He said they would investigate, but without a clear view of the person's face, it was unlikely they would make an arrest. The tire slashing cost me $800, even with insurance. I added it to my list of damages for the lawsuit and had a security camera system installed the next day. 3 days later, the camera caught Margaret's husband Gerald trying to stuff something into my mailbox at midnight. I called the police immediately, and they caught him 2 streets over with a stack of fake violation notices in his car. Each notice claimed I owed the HOA over $10,000 in fines and threatened immediate legal action. Gerald was arrested for harassment and tampering with mail, which is a federal offense. Margaret tried to claim she had nothing to do with it, but text messages on Gerald's phone proved she had sent him to my house with the fake notices. The police investigation into the HOA finances was making progress too. Detectives discovered that Margaret had created fake invoices from her husband's company and her daughter's business, billing the HOA for work that was never performed. Over the past 8 years, she had stolen nearly $160,000. With Gerald's arrest, the other HOA board members finally started to turn on Margaret. Brian Patterson and Scott Miller resigned from the board and gave statements to the police about questionable financial decisions Margaret had pressured them to approve. More neighbors came forward with stories of harassment, fake fines, and threatened violations. The special HOA meeting to remove Margaret as president was scheduled for a Thursday evening. By that point, nearly every homeowner in Pine Ridge Estates knew about the embezzlement investigation, and the clubhouse was packed when I arrived. Margaret sat at the front table, looking defiant despite everything. Her attorney was there too, though he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Nathan, who had been elected temporary board chairman, called the meeting to order. "We are here tonight to vote on the removal of Margaret Sanderson as HOA president, based on violations of her fiduciary duty, misappropriation of HOA funds, and harassment of homeowners. Mrs. Sanderson, do you have anything to say before we vote?" Margaret stood up, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize or show some remorse. Instead, she launched into a 10-minute tirade about how ungrateful everyone was, how she had devoted 8 years of her life to improving the neighborhood, and how we were all making a terrible mistake. "I have done nothing wrong," she concluded. "Every fine I issued was justified. Every dollar I spent was for the good of this community. If you vote to remove me, you will be making the biggest mistake in Pine Ridge Estates history." The vote was not even close. 48 homeowners voted to remove her, 3 abstained, and only Margaret's best friend Susan voted against removal. Margaret was officially out as HOA president. A new temporary board was elected with Nathan as president, and one of their first acts was to void all the fines Margaret had issued against me. But the criminal case was far from over. The district attorney charged Margaret with embezzlement, fraud, theft, and extortion. Gerald faced charges for the fake violation notices and tampering with mail. Both were released on bail, but they were not allowed to contact me or any of the witnesses in the case. The trial was set for 6 months out, which meant I had half a year of uncertainty ahead of me. Patricia said the civil lawsuit would probably settle once the criminal trial concluded, but there were no guarantees. In the meantime, life in Pine Ridge Estates slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board conducted a full financial audit and discovered even more irregularities. They hired a legitimate property management company to handle the administrative work and established new oversight procedures to prevent future embezzlement. I kept my head down, went to work, and waited for the trial. The state patrol kept me busy with assignments all over Colorado, which was good because it kept my mind off Margaret and the upcoming court case. Then, 3 months before the trial was supposed to start, I came home from a week-long assignment in Grand Junction to find Margaret standing in my driveway again. She looked terrible. She had lost weight, her hair was unkempt, and she had dark circles under her eyes. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered everything she had put me through. "You are violating the restraining order," I said, pulling out my phone to call the police. "Wait," she said, her voice cracking. "Please just wait, I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about, Margaret. Leave or I am calling the cops." "I want to make a deal," she said desperately. "I will drop all the HOA violations, admit I was wrong, pay you back for everything. Just please ask the district attorney to reduce the charges. I cannot go to prison, Owen." "I cannot." I stared at her. "You want me to help you after everything you did? After you tried to steal my trailer, fine me thousands of dollars for made-up violations, had your husband try to harass me and embezzled over $160,000 from the neighborhood." "I know I made mistakes," she said, and tears started streaming down her face. "I know I went too far, but I am begging you, please. My marriage is falling apart. My daughter will not speak to me. I have lost everything. Do not make me lose my freedom too. You did this to yourself, Margaret. You had every opportunity to back off, to follow the rules, to be a decent person. You chose not to. Now you have to face the consequences. Owen, please." She took a step toward me. "That is close enough." I raised my phone. "I am calling the police now. You need to leave." "Wait, just listen to me for 1 minute." She moved closer and I backed up toward my front door. "Margaret, I am warning you, do not come any closer." She kept walking toward me, her hands reaching out like she was going to grab me. "You do not understand. I need your help. I need you to talk to the DA." "Stop right there." The command came out sharp and automatic, backed by years of training. I pulled my wallet from my pocket and flipped it open, showing my state trooper badge. "I am Trooper Owen Kirkland, Colorado State Patrol. You are in violation of a restraining order. Get on the ground now." Margaret froze, her eyes going wide as she stared at the badge. "You are a cop, State Trooper. On the ground, hands behind your back." She stumbled backward, shaking her head. "No, no, no. You are a traveling salesman. You are gone all the time. You are never home. Because I work 72-hour shifts across the state." I kept my voice firm and professional. "On the ground, Margaret. Do not make this worse than it already is." "Oh God." The color drained from her face. "Oh God, I tried to extort a state trooper. I sent my husband to harass a state trooper. She sat down hard on my driveway, not even trying to run. I am so screwed." "Yes, you are." I called 911 and requested backup, keeping my eyes on Margaret the whole time. She just sat there, crying, her whole body shaking. Nathan came running over from his house, followed by several other neighbors who had heard the commotion. "Owen, what's going on?" "Margaret, what are you doing here?" "She violated the restraining order," I said. "Police are on the way." "Owen is a state trooper," Margaret said numbly. "Did you know that? Did anyone know that?" Nathan looked at me in surprise. "You are a cop, State Patrol. I keep my work life private." "That explains the weird hours," Nathan said, "and why you are gone for days at a time." Margaret started laughing, a high, slightly hysterical sound. "I tried to steal from a cop. I extorted a cop. I am going to prison forever." "Probably not forever," I said, "but yeah, you are going to prison." 2 Denver police units arrived within minutes, followed by a supervisor. I knew one of the officers, a guy named Tom Henderson who I had worked with on a joint operation a year ago. "Kirkland, what are you doing here?" Tom asked. "This is my house. That is Margaret Sanderson. She is under a restraining order not to come within 100 feet of me or my property. I came home and found her in my driveway, and she approached me despite being told to stay back. Tom looked at Margaret, who was still sitting on the ground crying, then back at me. Let me guess, HOA dispute. How did you know? Because HOA disputes are about 50% of the restraining order violations we deal with in this neighborhood. He walked over to Margaret. Madam, I need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back. Margaret did not resist as Tom handcuffed her. As he was walking her to his patrol car, she looked back at me one last time. I am sorry, she said. I am so sorry. I did not respond. There was nothing to say. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. After the police left, I spent an hour answering questions and giving a statement. Nathan and several other neighbors also gave statements about seeing Margaret approach me despite my warnings. So you are really a state trooper? Nathan asked after all the official business was done. Yeah. Have been for 12 years. Why did not you say something earlier, when Margaret first started harassing you? Because I did not want to use my job as a shield, I said. I wanted to handle this as a private citizen, following the normal legal channels. Using my badge would have felt like cheating. Even when she was trying to steal your trailer and fine you thousands of dollars. Even then. Margaret's crime was not about me being a cop. It was about her abusing her power and stealing from the HOA. The law applies to everyone equally, whether you are a cop or a civilian. I paused. Though I will admit, the look on her face when she saw my badge was pretty satisfying. Nathan laughed. I bet it was. The trial was moved up after Margaret's restraining order violation. Her attorney tried to get the new charge dismissed, arguing that she had not known I was a cop and would not have approached me if she had. The judge was not sympathetic. Ignorance of someone's profession is not a defense against violating a restraining order, Judge Winters said. Mrs. Sanderson was ordered to stay away from Mr. Kirkland. She violated that order. The fact that she subsequently discovered he was a law enforcement officer is irrelevant. With the new charge added to the existing ones, Margaret's attorney finally convinced her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and violating a restraining order. In exchange for her cooperation and agreement to pay full restitution to the HOA, she received a sentence of 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2 years. Gerald took a separate plea deal for the harassment charges and got probation plus community service. Their daughter Susan was not charged, as the investigation found no evidence she had known about the fake invoices from her company. The civil lawsuit settled for $60,000, which included all my legal fees, the cost of the slashed tires, compensation for the harassment, and punitive damages. The money came from Margaret and Gerald's personal assets, including the sale of their house in Pine Ridge Estates. With Margaret gone and the new HOA board running things properly, life in the neighborhood improved dramatically. Fines were only issued for real violations. Financial records were transparent and audited regularly, and people actually started enjoying living there again. I kept my job with the state patrol, and my neighbors finally understood why I was gone for days at a time and came home exhausted. Some of them started calling me for advice on legal issues or asking me to talk to their kids about the dangers of drunk driving or drug use. It was not what I had wanted when I first moved to Pine Ridge Estates, but it felt good to be part of a real community. Janet Chen told me that several other HOAs in the area had contacted the new board for advice on preventing similar embezzlement schemes. Apparently, Margaret had not been unique. There were HOA presidents and board members all over the Denver metro area who were abusing their power and stealing from their neighbors. You started something important. Janet said to me one evening when we were both at the community pool. People are paying attention now. They are demanding transparency and accountability. I just wanted to keep my trailer, I said. She smiled. And you did. But you also exposed a corrupt system and helped a lot of people in the process. That is worth something. Maybe she was right. I had not set out to be a hero or to reform the HOA system. I had just wanted to be left alone to live my life and park my trailer in my own garage. But sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for others too, even if you do not realize it at the time. 2 years later, I was at work when I got a call from Patricia Moore. Owen, I thought you would want to know. Margaret Sanderson was denied parole. What happened? She apparently got into several altercations with other inmates and refused to participate in the financial crime rehabilitation program. The parole board decided she had not shown sufficient remorse or rehabilitation. Patricia paused. She will be eligible again in 6 months, but honestly, I think she will end up serving her full sentence. I felt a mix of emotions hearing that. Part of me felt vindicated. Margaret had tried to destroy me and had stolen from dozens of families. She deserved to face real consequences. But another part of me just felt sad. She had thrown away her life, her marriage, her relationships with her children, all because she could not handle being told no. Thanks for letting me know, I said to Patricia. How are things at the neighborhood? Good. Really good, actually. The HOA is functioning properly, people are getting along, and no one has tried to steal my trailer in months. Patricia laughed. Well, that is progress. Take care of yourself, Owen. After we hung up, I sat in my patrol car for a few minutes, thinking about everything that had happened. The whole saga with Margaret had started because she wanted my trailer. Such a stupid, petty reason to ruin so many lives. But people do stupid, petty things all the time, especially when they think they have power over others. My radio crackled with a call about a traffic accident on I-25, and I pushed thoughts of Margaret Sanderson out of my mind. I had a job to do and people who needed help. That was what mattered now. As I drove toward the accident scene, lights flashing and siren wailing, I thought about the badge that had changed everything that day in my driveway. For years, I had kept my profession private, not wanting special treatment or to be defined by my job. But in the end, that badge had protected me in a way that nothing else could have. Margaret had thought she could bully me, harass me, steal from me. She had thought she was untouchable, that her position as HOA President gave her unlimited power. The moment she saw that badge, she realized how wrong she had been. Sometimes karma comes in the form of a court system, legal fees, and prison time. And sometimes it comes in the form of a state trooper badge appearing at exactly the right moment to make a bully realize they picked the wrong person to mess with. I never used my trailer as much as I thought I would. It sat in my garage most of the time, occasionally coming out when I helped Nathan move furniture or when I took a camping trip into the mountains. But every time I looked at it, I remembered what it represented. The moment I decided to stand up to corruption and abuse of power, even when it would have been easier to give in. That $8,000 trailer ended up costing Margaret Sanderson her freedom, her reputation, her marriage, and years of her life. All because she could not accept that some people will not be bullied, and some fights are not worth starting. The neighborhood erected a new sign at the entrance to Pine Ridge Estates, paid for with part of the recovered embezzlement funds. It read, "Welcome to Pine Ridge Estates, a community built on integrity and respect." I drove past that sign every time I came home from a shift, and it always made me smile. It was a reminder that good people working together can overcome corruption and create something better. It was a reminder that standing up for what is right, even when it is hard, is always worth it. And it was a reminder that you never know who your neighbors really are, or what they might be capable of when pushed too far. Margaret Sanderson learned that lesson the hard way, sitting in a prison cell, probably still wondering how a simple plan to steal a trailer had ended so disastrously. As for me, I kept doing my job, kept living in my house, and kept that trailer in my garage where it belonged. And if anyone ever asked about the HOA drama that had consumed Pine Ridge Estates for months, I had a simple answer. Follow the rules, treat people fairly, and never try to steal from a state trooper. It was advice that Margaret Sanderson probably wished she had heard a long time ago. But by the time she learned it, it was far too late to do anything but pay the price for her crimes and wait for a parole board that might never show her mercy. The community moved on, stronger and better than before. The new HOA board established scholarships for local students, organized neighborhood events that brought people together, and managed the finances with complete transparency. The money Margaret had stolen was recovered and put to good use, improving parks, updating playground equipment, and enhancing security throughout the neighborhood. I eventually became friends with most of my neighbors, who respected my need for privacy during my off time, but also appreciated having a state trooper in the community. Crime in Pine Ridge Estates dropped significantly, though I like to think that was more about good lighting and neighborhood watch programs than my presence. Years after the whole situation ended, I ran into Margaret's daughter Susan at a grocery store. She recognized me and hesitated, then walked over. "Officer Kirkland, I just wanted to say I am sorry for everything my mother put you through," she said. "I had no idea what she was doing. If I had known." "It is not your fault," I told her. "You are not responsible for her choices." "I know. But it still affects me. My business lost clients, people look at me differently. I changed my last name, but in this town, everyone still knows who I am." She looked down. "My mother still insists she did nothing wrong. Every time I visit her, she blames you, the HOA, the justice system." "Everyone but herself. Some people never learn," I said. "But you are not her. You get to decide who you are and what kind of person you want to be." Susan smiled sadly. "Thank you for that, and thank you for not giving in when she tried to bully you. If you had, she would have just kept doing it to other people. Maybe prison will eventually teach her something, even if it has not yet." We said goodbye, and I watched her walk away, carrying the weight of her mother's crimes. It was not fair, but life rarely is. All any of us can do is try to be better than our worst impulses, and hope that justice prevails when someone crosses the line. As for my trailer, it is still sitting in my garage, gleaming and ready for whenever I need it. It cost $8,000, but it taught me lessons worth far more than that about standing up to corruption, trusting the legal system, and the importance of communities holding their leaders accountable. Margaret Sanderson demanded my trailer, threatened me, tried to extort me, and made my life miserable for weeks. But in the end, when that state trooper badge came out, all her power and bluster disappeared, replaced by the stark realization that she had made an enemy she could not intimidate or control. She begged for mercy, and the justice system gave her exactly what she deserved: accountability for her crimes, time to reflect on her choices, and the knowledge that no amount of pleading or excuses would undo the damage she had caused. I sleep well at night knowing that I did the right thing, that I helped protect my community, and that my trailer is exactly where it belongs. In my garage on my property, beyond the reach of anyone who thinks they can take it from me.